How's it going, guys? And welcome back to episode 3 of the PLO high stakes cash games over at Triton Madrid 2022. There are 2 episodes already out there on my channel. Check them out to make sure to catch up on all the crazy action. We're looking here at a 1,000, 2,000 game in a short deck structure, which means everyone has an ante of 1,000 and the big blind has an ante of 2,000. Incentivizes a lot of VPIPing.
Here, back for another round of high stakes Pot Limit Omaha.
Got Tony G repping the Coin Poker logo. Paul Phua, Triton founder. All right, let's jump into the first hand here.
Short deck structure. You just gotta put 2K more if you want to continue.
Actually, they increased the blinds. Now it's 2K, 4K. So basically, everyone antes for 2K, button antes for 4K, and everyone can basically limp in for an additional 2,000, which means we should see a lot of limping in this structure. I talked about this in the prior episodes. Tony G comes in with the limp. Unsurprising. Ace 4 deuce deuce. Not even a bad hand. Timothy Adams overlimps with the 10-5-5-4. It's really hard to justify folding in this format, which is the whole point. I guess the idea is, first of all, Tom Dwan, as usual, tired from the grind. Feels like he has been grinding the last 15 years straight up. But anyway, it's really hard to fold. But I think they introduced maybe this blind structure because they were playing short deck just before, and then they switched it up to PLO. And to make people more comfortable with the game, they just kept the ante structure. Okay, Tom comes in as well. Paul Phua 7754. Everyone sees a flop so far, which is, again, not really surprising. It's hard to make a fold for another 2,000 in this massive pot. 26K to go. Let's see a flop.
Tony G bottom set.
Tony G has bottom set. In 1, 2, 3, 4, 6-way pot, 26K out there. They're obviously playing very deep. I think you should just go out and lead. I mean, obviously there's a chance that you can get a check raise in successfully. But in the 6-way pot, I would imagine a lot of flush draws will just check, and a lot of top pairs will also check if they don't have something strong alongside. So actually, I kind of just prefer betting, even though he is out of position. And we do see actually Timothy Adams does check a 10 high flush draw and a gutter, kind of like making my point. Rui Cao pots it though. He has the nut flush draw with king 3-3-6, kind of aggressive. The issue with this bet is, I mean, it's not a huge issue, but it's kind of a pretty big problem once you get potted back, because then you're looking at a bare flush draw. And you get 2-2-1-4-1 cards. So you're basically getting priced out of the pot by this point. So it's a pretty expensive stab. No one raised pre, so maybe no one has aces. And Tony G does not only have bottom set, but he also is blocking top set, holding an ace. So this is a pretty straightforward. Well, let's just double check here. How deep are these guys? So Rui Cao is 460,000 euros deep. And there's 26K in the middle. So we're looking here at an SPR of about 20 or something. This is a very high SPR. Do you want to get it in with bottom set? Potentially run into 9-9. Thing is, Rui Cao is very aggressive, pre and post flop. And I think you can pretty much rule out aces every single time. He could have ace 9, which could lead to a big cooler in favor of Tony G. And obviously you can have a variety of like top pairs or top and bottom pairs. 9 deuce, flush draws and gut shots. Like in this case, he has the nut flush draw. So I guess potting is the play.
The nut flush draw.
Let's see what Tony's going to do. I haven't seen this hand before. Wait, what? Wait, what? He folds? What? He folds bottom set against a single bet in a limped pot. Are the cards wrong? This is sick. He folds bottom set in ace 9 deuce.
Tony G just folded a set? Wow, he just folds a bottom set to the craziest player at the table.
Maybe the cards are wrong. This is hard to imagine to actually happen.
Maybe Tony G is just trying to lock up a win because he's about to leave soon.
I'm drunk, boss.
I mean,
I don't know. Seems so crazy.
Timothy makes a good fold here. Maybe that's also something to point out. If you pot the flop here with the nut flush draw, like you will also force out some weaker flush draws. Like in this case, Timothy Adams actually just folding a gutter and a 10 high flush draw.
Wait, how much?
26,000.
I don't think Paul wants to continue here, but that fold was sick. Just locking up the win with bottom set. It's such a good spot anyway.
Man, it seems so crazy to fold a bottom set here.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the turn.
That was sick.
No.
That's
Okay, let's continue. This is an interesting lineup. I would say Tony G is, though, the most experienced PLO player, but it could be that he's in a big winning streak one trying to lock it up. And he goes for the under the gun fold with 9-8-7-7. He is rainbow, but that being said, you only have to call 2K for a pot of 16K. It's a reasonable fold if you assume people behind you are going to raise you every single time. But in general, you will have to like limp a lot of hands that do reasonably well in multi-way pots, and I would say this is a reasonable choice. We've seen worse hands completing essentially. Again, this is a very non-intuitive structure for PLO because it's a short deck structure with the antes. Let's see what happens here. We got a couple folds. We got Paul Phua coming in for the limp. Makes sense. We got Tom Dwan. I mean, this is a hand you could consider just folding, like King 10 7 deuce. It's a tough one. And also Rui Cao behind in position is going to raise quite frequently, given how deep they are and given how he enjoys playing the game. I would imagine he's going to pot like 20K or whatever, 25K, 30K. He makes it 34,000. And so Paul Phua has Queen 10, 8, 6. It has some connectivity, but these gaps, the jack, the 9, the 7, they're quite significant. And having an 8-side suit, it's not great. A lot of this game format basically, like the way it happens, similar to short deck, is you limp, and then you actually fold quite a bit against the big ISO raise, but you still have to limp given the price you're getting. So I don't think this is a spot like in a typical 6-max or 8-max setting where you limp in, and then you, in order to call a raise. In this structure, because we're playing these anti-structures, you limp and you do not always continue against the raise. Not at all, in fact, because the price is so different. When you limped for 2,000 to win 16, 18, or 20K. And then when someone pots it, you get 2-1 suddenly. So before that, it was like 8-1, 9-1, 10-1. Now you're getting 2-1. So it's a huge difference. And also your opponent shows a lot more strength than when you initially limped. So you have to make some high frequency limp folding strategies are basically appropriate here. However, these guys have been playing and drinking a long time. So Paul, we discovered in the first episode, is new to PLO, it seems like. He makes the call. It's not the worst hand, but again, getting 2-1 out of position against a very aggressive player, probably not the best decision to come in there. And he is in some ways dominated, I guess. Let's see what happens. Flop is 9-8-3. So let's just double check on these hands. Paul has middle pair and a gutter. So actually it's a double gutter, a 7 to a straight and a jack to a straight. Backdoor diamonds, and Rui Cao has bottom pair, not gut shot. So bottom pair, not gut shot, just wants to check. You don't want to risk getting check raised and then not getting denied your equity against the hand, let's say like 8-9. Paul could consider leading. The issue with his hand is that, I mean, there's no real huge issue. But in general, the hands you're looking to lead, they have a little bit more nuttiness potential. Like Paul has a jack to make the nuts, but apart from that, like a lot of the 2-pair outs and the backdoor diamond draws and even a 7, they are quite tricky. So you want to be careful when building a pot with hands like these out of position. Also, if you lead out and you get potted, you're oftentimes going to run into a hand like ace, jack 10 or something that kind of dominates you. It's not a great spot either. So I guess his hand is a little bit too middling to consider leading. And so checking is fine, and Rui should just check back. All right, smart move. See what the turn brings.
Don't look at No. He's got it.
Okay, so turn is a queen. And this is obviously a really bad card for Rui Cao when he doesn't bet the flop. He's going to exclude a lot of Jack 10 combos. He's going to exclude a lot of Queen 9, 8, 9, like sets, 2 pairs basically, and straights. And Paul, in this case, does have 2 pair and a straight blocker and a straight draw. And he still has that straight draw. So he wants to bet. He isn't really polarizing himself to like the nuts. So I think betting something like half pot is challenging for like over pairs.
He's got queen
And in
eight.
terms of like bluffs, you can use a hand like ace jack jack, for example, ace 10 10. You can use some gut shots like king 10. Let's say he has a hand like king 10 8 7. Like that's a reasonable combo to pick. Basically hands that benefit from making aces fold and still have some potential to improve. Then there are some like dry bluffs like ace jack jack, ace 10 10.
No.
Rui Cao just with the
It just, that's the thing. People that don't play PLO very often, they love betting pot. They just love it. You saw that also with Rui Cao in the previous hand. And so here's the problem with betting pot in general for all the guys out there that don't play PLO as regularly. The thing is, like when you bet pot, you are making your opponent's decisions a lot easier because them folding a lot is actually more often correct. What you're trying to do though is in many spots is you're trying to challenge the medium strong part of your opponent's range and force them to continue, and you do that by betting smaller. And if you bet pot and your opponent continues, you also have less profitable bluffs on the river because their range is already much narrower. Of course, there are spots where you're looking to pot because you're looking to polarize your range, but way too often people just pot and make their opponent's folding, like fold habit or fold frequency actually really correct because they're not getting a good price. And that's not good, you know, you're trying to extract some value. So in Paul's shoes, he actually is able to extract some value because Rui Cao did turn 2 pair. But in general, I would not recommend to pot on this turn. Let's see what happens here in the river. A rainbow indeed. River is a jack. So now Paul Phua makes a straight. Should he be afraid of king 10? Not necessarily. I mean, king 10 shouldn't call a pot-sized turn bet very often at all. Like, what does Rui Cao have when he calls a turn? Probably has a queen in a straight draw. Like pretty often. I mean, you could have queen, king 10, I guess. But if he calls this rainbow turn, like he's going to have a queen and a straight draw very often. Now, in this case, he has a queen and a 3. But I would say that on the river, it's a little bit... is it marginal to try to extract value? Not really. King 10 shouldn't be too much in the calling range. And like Rui Cao probably has like a good amount of like... Could have queens, could have queen jack. Could have, I guess, queen 9 and queen 8 is a little bit less frequent. So I think just betting here is a good idea. Maybe something along the lines of like half pot and challenging again a hand like pocket queens or a hand like queen jack. You're trying to get called by a non-straight, right? Because otherwise, what's the point? You're going to chop.
he seems confused. He doesn't know what he's got.
King 10 tonight.
So let's see what happens. It's trying to figure it out. In general, like you want to be careful holding your whole cards like that, by the way, because that's an easy way for your opponents to sometimes see what you actually are holding.
At 10, I check or not? King 10 is enough. Check. At 10, check. King 10? Check for him to bluff because it's Rui Cao.
Did he check or did he not check? He said check so frequently. So
somewhere around it. 10 jack, you know. Anything can win now in this situation. Sure.
pretty hard job for the dealer.
Check.
I guess now he checked.
Check.
Check. Yeah, maybe a little small bet would have gotten called there.
PLO, you lost all the calls.
Anyway, he wins a pot. Let's move on to the next hand.
I should pay 2 right now.
We get Timothy 7744. No, that's Paul Phua. Limps in, that's fine. Tom can definitely raise it up. 24,000 makes sense. Ace Queen 10-5 not suit.
Pot it up.
Waking Young has Ace Queen Deuce, no Ace high suit, but the Queen high suit. It's not really a hand you want to be involved with. Obviously, you have that set, but apart from that, it's going to get really iffy. So this is a hand that if you see a razor that is kind of light, you could 3-bet sometimes and trying to get it heads up. Multi-way, it's like not as valuable, I would say. But okay, he goes ahead and makes the call. And then Paul has a very easy call as well.
Looking for a set.
82,000 euros in the middle. Flop is...
Check
That was
10-9.
an aggressive check. Is Jack 10-9. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Tom has a pair and open-ended straight draw. He also has the nut gutter to the king and the Y king Young has the blockers plus a flush draw. So in theory, I would say Tom's hand is a little bit too weak to bluff. Doesn't have a hard draw. He does have that queen as kind of a blocker, but he's gonna run into like hands that can continue, given that he doesn't have a heart really often. And then so he should check, and then King should just bet the flop for like half pot, third pot, start off there. That's what happens here. So it does go check check. We want to see a bet here of like 36,000, for example. That's a good sizing.
Stab here, pocket queen.
35,000. There you go. Good sizing. And then we should see 2 folds. A quick cheers. And
Tom here comes on.
it's just a little bit too loose. It's kind of funny because in this case, even though King is bluffing, he's still like a massive favorite against Tom's really loose call. Check on the turn, and King. So what can you put Tom on here? Well, Tom can have a flush draw like the aces and hearts, kings and hearts, right? Trying to basically chase those hands out. If he pots a turn, that's pretty likely to happen. Tom can have a hand like 8-7 or 2 pair or a set. And those hands also have a really hard time continuing against the pot size bet. So on the turn, if you have queen, queen, plus an additional draw with the hearts and the king, it's just time to like semi-bluff here and apply max pressure by potting. They're also still very, very deep. So he would not be committed if Tom check raises all in. He bets 80. Yeah, you just want to pot here in PLO. Like, as I mentioned before, sometimes you actually want to pot when you're polarized, like in this case. And Tom has a very easy fold in the turn. Yeah, just give me a second. He has queen 10. He has queen 10. Jesus.
Tom calls again.
This is some loosey-goosey behavior. I'm sure King has no idea he has the best hand right now by far. This is just really not a good PL. And now, so river backdoor clubs, King has no club at all. It's time to give up. Like, if the backdoor clubs roll in after Tom calls again, you just give up at this point. Without a club in your hand, it's just time to give up, basically. Like, Tom can have 10-9 of clubs. You can have a hand like ace king 10 of like ace king 10 9 of clubs. You could have a pocket 10s with clubs, pocket 9s with clubs. You could have all sorts of different club combos, honestly. Oh wait, he's bluffing now. Again, pot size on the river without a single club. That's a little bit, it's not bad necessarily. Like, if he thinks Tom is going to lead a high flush or the nut flush like very often, this could be a powerful play, because it's kind of hard to find bluffs in King's spot after betting flop and turn. Like, he's going to have so much showdown value on this run out. So I don't hate it. It's just definitely not standard. And like, Tom was playing pretty loose, like on all streets. Too loose. That's the best way to basically say it. Okay, Phua has another hand, ace jack 5-3. Definitely want to come in. You could also raise this hand. He does raise to 16,000. We do have a couple folds. Elton is in the hijack and calls queen 6-3 low suit. It's a very poor hand. It looks kind of nice, but there are so few flops where you're able to continue and flop good. And they're going heads up. Yes, to the flop. 7-7-8.
He does not have anything.
So Paul has absolute garbage, and in PLO you don't tend to just bet the flop, especially out of position, without any sort of like pretty good reason. So if he would have like an 8 or 10-9 or jack 10 or 5-6, some sort of blocker in place, some sort of equity in place, it could make sense to bet the flop here for a third. But as it stands, it is just too weak of a hand to consider betting at this point. Just want to check and fold.
I'm just gonna stab here.
He does check, and then Elton bets 25k, so kind of like slightly more than half pot with queen 6-3. It's not the dream hand to do it with. Like, you are in the same way sort of like not blocking any of the check calling hands. Like, you don't block aces, you don't block kings, and you don't block like those straight draw kind of hands wrapping around 8-7. So your opponent will find a call very often. In case he is behind, he's not holding that much equity. Like in this case, he only has 20%, for example. So Bet on the flop is a little bit loose. It's not a huge deal. This is also a hand that Tom can just fold, even though he only has to call 2,000. But EP, like first to act, King Jack 6 deuce is such a bad hand. It's just better to muck it. But we saw Tom playing all sorts of hands. Now Rui calls with 9974. Waikin, Yong raises with Ace King King 8 to 26,000. This is good. I mean, this is just standard. And like Tom has just a really bad hand. Maybe he's drunk, I don't know, or just bored. But like King Jack 6 deuce is a frisky hand. I mean, it's not a frisky hand. It's just like a really bad hand. And then Rui Cao's 9974, like even that hand has sort of more potential, like less danger of being dominated. Okay, Queen 6, not much going. Wei King or Y King doesn't really have to protect much. He has the club draw alongside. His opponents could check raise him with a queen. It's probably better to just check. And yeah, I like this. And just like keep the door open for someone to bluff. Turn now gives Tom a straight draw and a king high flush draw. Goes for another check. He does have a 6, which does matter. Like he is blocking 6-6. And he can also improve 2a6 against the calling range on the turn. Does have the diamond draw. His hand doesn't really want to check call or check raise, so I think like betting actually makes sense. Rui turned a boat though with 9s. It's a great hand to start betting. Like Y King can easily have aces here or kings. He bets large. Let's see. He bets like almost pot, 75,000, and that's fine. Like in this case, he's basically saying, "Hey, you guy in position. Like I'm not value betting anything worse than a queen, basically. So like going large makes sense." It's not like Rui Cao has a hand like pocket 10s and is betting something like quarter pot. It would just be too big of a hand to bet altogether.
Also got a club flush.
And then Y King has ace king king 8. So he is unblocking like jack 10 kind of combos. He's unblocking the diamonds, the nut flush draw with clubs. Probably a little bit too strong of a hand to continue, to not continue, but it is actually closer than people might think.
But that's no longer
in a three-way spot, like you're gonna run into a better hand like here reasonably often. It also depends how aggressive your opponents are. Tom against a almost pot size bet in a call. There's no way he's gonna call this, right? Okay. I mean, we've seen some crazy plays today. Okay, that's an amazing river card for Rui Cao. Obviously, all the draws have busted, so in his shoes, he should like tank, but he just snap pots it.
Rui Cao going for it all, hoping for a hero call.
So he goes for the pot size bet. That's actually an all-in. Wait, he cannot go all in, right? It's 238,000 in the middle, and it says all in 270,000.
Rui Cao going for it all, hoping for a hero call.
I don't know. He goes for a big bet. Let's start off there. Should Wei King call? I'd say no. He doesn't block any of the full houses, and that's kind of a concern. He does have 2 clubs, which also isn't great to like call river. Obviously, Rui Cao could have a hand like a 9 in a straight draw, a 6 in a straight draw, 2 flush draws on the turn, and then just barrel river. It's certainly a possibility, but even then you have to sort of choose the hands you want to call down with, and you could have a 6, you could have a 9 in your hand. Sometimes he has a queen, sometimes he has a hand without diamonds or clubs that call the turn. Like all those candidates are better than ace king king 8 with clubs. So folding here would be smart, but Rui also has a very loose image, so I'm not sure what it's going to do. Let's have a look. Yeah, he folds. Takes his cards.
I would call. If I call, I would call. I call.
You don't want to call. You're dead. Okay. Let's cover one more hand. What happens here? We have a call for 6,000. Okay, now they increase the blinds. Why not? 3,000 ante, 6,000 button ante. We have some limps. It's a big game now, 6,000. Paul has queen 4 rainbow. Over limps makes sense. Tom.
I haven't seen people have so much fun in a long time playing poker. It's great.
Oh my god. Tom, how rich is this guy? He just bumps it up to 43,000 with jack 10-9-3 single. Jesus, he really likes the gamble. I didn't know that he's that much of a gambler.
very easy to pop. After you,
I don't think Paul's gonna fold queen 4-4.
You just keep upping the stakes.
That's a loose.
Maybe upstairs.
That's an action player there.
All right, Paul's gonna come here.
Okay,
double.
Paul's gonna call. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, queen 4-4 rainbow. It has a lot of difficult flops to continue on, to be honest. But see what these guys are doing. They're giving action.
Call. So 27. 4.
In the math. Rui Cao playing the dealer.
I'm pretty sure it's right.
Okay. And here we go. Tom flops top 2. How much is in the middle? 100k. 560 behind. So Tom's hand technically is more of a check. Like when you start thinking about stack to pot ratio of 5 on the flop and a jack 10-6 board is very connected, you need to think about what hands are you looking to build a big pot with, where you potentially go all in by the river, or you're comfortable facing an all in by the river at a stack to pot ratio of 1, right? If you go bet flop, bet turn, or you bet flop and he bets turn and river, you want to have a hand that has sort of that nuttiness potential, right? You could have a hand like queen 9-8 or king queen ace. Like those are the type of hands. You could have a hand like 2 pair and a straight draw. You could have a hand like top pair and a straight draw and a back draw flush draw. Like those are the kind of hands that can make the nuts on the river, where Tom's hand jack 10-9-3 has very few possibilities to make the absolute nuts on the river. So therefore it's a good deceptive hand to check back and trying to keep the pot under control. So this is a standard check back, like top 2 pair, no backup on a very dynamic board.
So Tom's got jack 10, top
Just check, but he goes for the bet.
two.
How much did he bet anyway? 85,000. Okay. Again, probably better to check this hand. This is a very nice hand. King, queen, jack, 9, a playable hand. I think in this lineup, I just prefer raising because your opponents are still gonna call you with like all sorts of garbage. And like the hands you want to limp that are actually strong, I think they should be strong enough where you're very comfortable limp re-raising if you do limp. And I think this hand is not it's not a great candidate to limp re-raise. Like if you do face another re-raise pre-flop, basically, you're gonna run into aces a lot. So I think this hand is great to just like raise yourself and then get called. And if someone 3-bets you can call.
That's for the dealers.
Okay.
But we're still going on.
Thank you.
How much you win?
So we do see
Wow. 7 million too little.
a couple limps.
Good luck, everybody.
You come, you don't play
5
tournament,
people
no
to the
sit.
flop.
Boy, now.
Flop is king 7-3.
See you tomorrow.
620. See you tomorrow. Thank
Too many whole cards. Let's have a look.
you.
White king has top pair.
Well done, everybody. Well done.
Tony leaves. Locks up the win.
Okay, Rui Cao
That was a
pops
shocking
up.
fold with the bottom
What do
set.
they have? Inside straight draw.
So Rui Cao bets 24,000 because why not? Is this pot? They just potted into a 5-way pot with a gutter. Just a gutty. Backdoor nut draw.
Straight draw.
This is
backdoor
obviously
flush draw.
not really advisable.
Not much at all. White King Young calls.
White King Young calls with bare top pair backdoor flush draw. It's a little bit loose in a 5-way pot, but as you can tell, these guys are action players, and Rui Cao is probably the most action. See what happens. So Tom is gonna fold, and they're heading to the turn. Heads up. We're looking for a 5. It's a
Turn makes 3
spade.
spades.
Top 2 now for White King. He has no spade though.
Flush.
Should Rui bet now? I mean, he got called by a pot-sized bet, and also everyone else folded, which makes it even more likely that he has spades. Like White King has spades because everyone else has folded. River is a 10.
White King Young.
Okay, so now straight with the Jack 9, and Rui Cao has just a 10. Facing another check. I think he can't win by checking, and he does have a spade.
Hits
So I think
Jack
it's
9
he should
straight.
try to bluff this basically.
Close if I should fold or call. Even though I had
Bets. He bets really small. He goes for the leveling sizing, 35k. It's representing a low flush. It's a tough spot because the flop was 5 ways. Can you really give your opponent this much credit to have such a wide range there? It's a tough call even though the bet is small. And now when Rui sort of like leans over, in terms of like timings, not timings, in terms of like tells, in general, if someone tries to be overly comfortable, they're not comfortable, but like confident and comfortable, it could be a sign of weakness, you know?
It's just me and you heads up. My hand's pretty good.
I see your hand.
Right, but I have two guys after me, so it's like
Maybe.
close. And the thing is, like, once I call, if one of them all ins, I probably need to call.
Okay.
So
I don't know how to play. Okay, we're gonna stop in a few hands anyway.
Rui Cao on a bluff.
I will continue knowing it, but if you guys want to play short deck, whatever, I can go.
Want to play short deck? No, you don't want to play short deck.
I'm
So now he grabs for the chips. Let's have a look if Rui Cao gives something away.
I think game overlap. Play again another time. Oh, I want to.
He sees that he's going to get called and he's trying to interrupt the pattern. So this is also very often sort of a tell that he doesn't want to get called because it's about to happen. He takes his last chance to sort of trying to change Wai King Yong's mind.
Play.
Boom.
Come to my room.
Too late.
Play heads up.
Nice call. Nice call in a crazy game of PLO. We have a little bit more footage. Maybe we have more footage for one more episode. If you guys enjoy this kind of content, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel to see more of it. This was another episode of Triton Cash Games in a slightly different format, ante format. And we'll see if these guys will fire some more interesting bullets in the next one. Until then, take care.